Good morning, everybody. It's your Self Chef crew back for another Saturday morning podcast. We've got Patrick here, Derek,
Hello, everyone.
Doug.
Heidi ho, neighbor.
All righty. And we've got an interesting topic today. This is the second episode in our happiness and contentment, our contentment discussion. And the title of today's discussion is Be Curious. It is difficult to be unhappy if you are curious. All right. And we're going to start, as always, with a quote. This was a good one from Albert Einstein. And I think he's probably being a little bit too humble in this, but he basically says, I have no special talents. I'm only passionately curious. So I thought that was a good way to start a discussion today. And I'm going to be like started off in saying curiosity, and I've been doing quite a bit of studying on the last couple of years, has been a bit of an anomaly for me. It's taken a little bit for me to get my head around, right? I know, Doug, you have probably maybe gravitated toward it a little bit quicker or better or whatever than I have. I know you've been on the curiosity bandwagon for a while. And so, but I have been using some of the models, especially as it relates to some of the work that Dr. Jud Brewer does as it relates to curiosity as a way to break habits and that type of thing. But I also had a bit of an opening internal whatever thought this morning and getting in preparation for this. And I think it's semantics where we're talking about curiosity. And maybe I think about it more as awareness. And I think they're super related. Before we jump in, let's go around the horn and get some initial thoughts. We'll start with you, Derek.
I think when you think about curiosity, I see it as the biggest conflict with curiosity is our own prejudice and bias to society or culture or conditioning that's happened in our lives. So I think that has a tendency to block our ability to be curious often. And so, I think you're right in line, Patrick, with awareness and curiosity is something that in my mind goes hand in hand. And for you to be able to move beyond a prejudice or bias or a strong stance on something as though you're right requires you to take a step back to, in a sense, shift yourself to a level of awareness that makes you curious and asking some powerful questions or just engaging someone differently from the way you normally would.
Yeah, absolutely. You wrapped quite a few topics in there. That was very well said. Doug.
Yeah, I think I've looked at curiosity as actually kind of a tool. So if I'm having a bad day, I find like go learn about something, or sometimes you're having a bad day because maybe you're stressed about something at work, and I try to reframe it into, maybe I'm stressing about because I don't know enough about this, or maybe I'm overwhelmed by a particular new technology capability or something. And, the way you work through sort of that and some uncertainty around that is say, I'm going to be curious about this. I'm going to go, see if I can read anything about it, see if I can watch something on YouTube that kind of breaks it down and makes it more simply. But, it's a tool for sort of taking some negative mindset and turning it into more positive mindset. I think I've mentioned this before in terms of growth mindset and other things. It's like, well, I don't know anything about that ... yet, right? And so, then you kind of really start to have a more positive view about the thing you might have been stressing about. And it's also a tool when you're having an interaction with somebody that you're not really very happy about. And if you start to get curious about, maybe something's going on in their world, maybe I wonder why this person's acting like this. So, maybe they experience a customer like me 10 times a day or something like that. Anyways, if you get curious about a situation, especially something that maybe feels a little negative or feels a little stressful, you really can turn it into a more positive experience.
Yeah, I really like what you were kind of tapping on there with getting a different perspectives, right? Understanding where somebody's coming from. So I'm gonna take this and describe what I do personally as it relates to using curiosity. Because again, this is not something that came, maybe natural is not the right word, but I really had to wrap my head around this because, as you guys are aware, concepts without science to back them up just don't resonate, I think, with any of us. We tend to look at evidence-based or science-based things, and as we're doing our podcast and living our lives. So curiosity was one in which I really had to get my head around as it relates to the science. And then I started putting things together, and I'll give you how I use this, in my own personal life, right? And a lot of it goes back to mindfulness. So if you think of mindfulness, curiosity, and awareness, to me, they're very, very closely related. And I use this as it relates to like dealing with feelings of anxiety or when you have those unfortunate thoughts that are coming into your head, right? We've talked about it many times that mindfulness certainly helps you observe your thoughts, but curiosity is a close cousin to that. So I'll give you an example. And think about it as when you're experiencing something like anxiety over a meeting or just anything in which you're having an uncomfortable feeling, as opposed to trying to pressure test on why you're having the feeling. You accept it. Oh, I'm having the thought or the feeling that I'm anxious about this meeting, and go to the what. What does it feel like? Right? And start becoming curious and aware of, oh, I've have my chest is tight, or I've got a frown, or whatever the case may be, and actually leaning into with curiosity into that, right? And again, observing it, because they're the observing self as opposed to the feeling self. But once you take a position of, yep, I'm not going to try to suppress this. You guys know I've talked previously. I was the master of suppressing emotions for most of my life, but actually leaning into it from a perspective of observational curiosity, right? Which I tend to frame up as awareness. That's why I struggle with the word curiosity. I don't know, but if I frame it up as I'm becoming aware that, I've got a tight chest, or my hands are sweaty, and really go into that, become very curious about it, I find myself becoming like the investigator or the scientist, discovering what I'm feeling. And that is a better sensation or than being anxious itself. So it kind of ties into the title, right? It's hard to be unhappy or miscontent when you're being curious. So that's one thing that I've been practicing over the last couple of years, is when, or even like anger, when I'm starting to sense it. I don't get angry very often, but there's been a challenging week at work, and in things where it's Friday afternoon and somebody is just coming up with something that doesn't make a lot of sense, and you can sense you're okay, how am I going to deal with this, and becoming curious. I'm having the sensation, or I'm having the feeling that I'm getting angry. What does this feel like? Is my blood racing? Is my heart beating faster, or whatever the case may be? So that's how I use it. And when I become curious about how I'm feeling and observing that, it really, really helps. So I know that was a bit of a long-winded response there, but Doug, I'll kick it back over to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, actually, similar thought I was having about curiosity is exactly that point, because mindfulness, again, is another tool, but mindfulness all about being present, right? And understanding what's going on in the present. And if you get curious about how you're feeling, if you get curious about your surroundings, then you're being more present. I also think, when whatever's going on, if you take the time to think about like what I want to be curious about in this situation, my understanding, and I'm not the scientist you are in terms of the research you do around the science, it stimulates the reward centers of your brain. If
Yep.
you go from like focusing on the anxiety or focusing on, oh crap, what's going to happen in the future, and you're just present and you focus on what's going on now, it activates a different part of your brain, which, I think is net positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek.
Yeah, I like to think of this as internal curiosity, where you take a pause and ask yourself some questions that you internalize and you answer them within yourself. Like what's happening right now, or what am I feeling, or how is this impacting me now? And you really start, when you do that, it's like you're making a connection to like a journaling experience where you're internalizing what's happening within yourself in the moment. And I think that is what trains you. When you can do that, just take that pause and get internally curious within yourself. You're able to start applying that even externally as you come into situations or experiences with others, or at work, or in your home life, or in your community. You're able to start identifying those same questions of what's happening externally. So to me, it's like training yourself to be internally curious.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And I double click again on and kind of riffing off what you guys were saying there is the using curiosity from the perspective of habit change was something I really had to wrap my head around. So I'm going to show this. This is a book from Dr. Brewer that really got me interested in this stuff. And it relates to, I'll pause for just a second on the curiosity, but basically how you get into a position where you can break bad habits or establish new better habits, right? And the model that he come up with, and this is not an advertisement for Dr. Brewer here, but it's pretty cool. It's you map out the habit, right? This trigger leads to this behavior, leads to this result, right? So that's kind of gear one. Gear two is pressure testing the result. Am I really getting the result that I want? If I do this unhealthy behavior, it may feel good, maybe a quick term reward, a dopamine hit for a second there. And Doug was talking about the neuroscience, but it may result in something unfortunate afterwards, right? And then that in itself may be enough to change the behavior, because if you change the reward value associated with it, then you may change the habit. But using curiosity as the bigger, better offer is the way he describes it, meaning that if you get curious about your habit and really become aware of it, then curiosity itself becomes the reward or the outcome, which, as we've been discussing on the call here, curiosity feels good. There is neuroscience, as Doug was talking about there, that curiosity integrates reward, memory, decision making, all of those together, and provides a very pleasant experience, right? We're probably not going to get into deep neuroscience on the call here, but it would actually be really cool if we did. But and curiosity itself becoming the reward or the outcome or the better result than doing the actual unhealthy behavior. So in some of the habits that that I've been trying to break, or building new habits, is doing that exact model and then becoming very curious. Like, for example, I think that we've used the example before, like stopping in a fast food restaurant, on the way to work or the way home from work or whatever. Yeah, it could be, really quick. It's going to be salty and greasy, and get a hit of dopamine there. But if you really look at, become curious, okay, what does hunger actually feel like, and what's going to happen if I eat, a Big Mac every day on the drive home from work? There's going to be unpleasant outcomes from that. So be curious about it and let the curiosity take the place of doing the bad habit. So
Just
anyway,
if I could jump in on one part there is, I don't know, you guys have known me a while. I haven't always been accused of being high energy, pretty low energy guy, right? Laid back, whatever word you want to use. But I find that curiosity, you go about your day, you have things happening as you go about your day. Some things are energy zappers and some things are energy builders. And like anytime you turn your mindset to, I wonder why this is happening, or I wonder how that works. Like, you probably all have experienced a time when you said, I'm curious how that works, and you go either look into it, or as a kid, you took something apart just to see how it worked. It's very energizing. Like, it raises your energy levels. And I think that's why, when you think about the topic of our podcast, it's difficult to be unhappy if you're curious. You might be bored, you might be angry with somebody, but if you turn around and like just say, I want to go learn about this thing or whatever, like it energizes you and it just turns you away from the unhappiness, right?
it becomes the reward. Yeah, totally agree. Derek?
Yeah, I think, what would our world be like if we didn't have people that explored and discovered and, used that as a way to create and, and just be interested in. And, we would not have amazing breakthroughs that we see all around us with technology, with different services and programs that's come about. So, people, the thing about this is it's an exploration, and to me, that's what I've had to do is go on an internal exploration on life's journey to look at what's no longer serving my best interest or what's no longer working for me, whether it's a career or it's a situation in family or, whatever it is in community. Maybe you're part of an organization that you're not connected with the values or the purpose anymore, and being able to be curious with yourself as to what it is that isn't working, and then being able to explore from there to discover what it is that's going to work best for you in your best interest. I think that's something I would say that is a part of the journey of this topic, to lead yourself back to what it is that's best for you and makes you happy, right? What it is that makes you connected to your value system and your mission or your purpose, or what it is you believe in.
Yep, absolutely. All right, folks, and I think we're getting close on time. Let's talk about some final thoughts. Doug, I know this is near and dear to your heart, man, so I'm going to yield the floor to you.
Yeah, a couple quick points. One is, I think, I apply this all the time in my daily life. I know you've talked about journaling and other things. Like every day, I don't necessarily take the time to write it down, but I do say, like, what makes a rewarding life? What makes we only have so many days on earth, so many minutes. And I think if I learned something today, it was a good day. And so it's one of the measuring sticks I use is like, and it's sometimes my actions in the evening is like, today I felt like I did a lot of the same stuff. Let me go watch a video on YouTube. These topics that you and we all talk about, they're things that I took time to go be curious about and learn about. And I think it's rewarding on multiple levels, like you were saying. But the other thing that we talked about being on longer journeys. I think one of the things I've tried to catch myself doing of late, and I try to be intentional about it, is taking time to realize I have a lot to be content about. I don't have to be thinking about, things I don't have or things I wish I could have achieved. And I think it's taking the time to step back and saying, like, am I being contentful, whatever the right word is? Do I have contentment? I think be curious about like what you do have, and be curious about, just something you try to learn something every day to just, again, it's turning your mindset into more of a positive outcome kind of mindset and focusing on what can I go learn, and, how can I be more content? Right.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'll say kind of in closing that, I really associate the curiosity and the awareness with the concept of, what the psychologist Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious or subconscious conscious, you will struggle with it and call it fate. That's a paraphrase. That's not an exact quote. But for me, the power of curiosity is when you're able to be curious about things that may be ingrained patterns you're not even aware that you're doing, and you bring those up. You become curious. Why am I doing this? How does it make me feel? And force that, or bring that up and actually become curious about it and pressure test it and look at it from a different perspective. It allows you to see things that you can change in your behavior, right? And observe and that type of thing. So I've been very encouraged by using, the curiosity / awareness approach to refine some of my, workout stuff and eliminate some of the things that I wanted, from a habit perspective out of my life. So for me, and I think you said it, Doug, it's a tool. It's a tool that did not come natural to me. I had to become, kind of, wade into it there, but it's become a superpower in the toolbox that I have. Derek.
I would say, just in closing, curiosity is like a window, right? It lets you see in, it lets you see out, and I think that it allows you to take a moment, a pause, as I mentioned before, to look at what's going on around you, and instead of like making it wrong or being at odds with it or in conflict with it, just allowing you to take a moment to look at the why it's happening, what you're feeling, what impact is it having on me. And even with other people, somebody that's upset, you can sense that when you're curious and coming from a curiosity perspective to, how are you feeling today, or what's going on? You seem upset, and just it creates an opening to a different experience and a different engagement in that relationship or in that moment with the situation.
Yeah, I really like how you're tying that into the podcast we did a couple of weeks ago about everybody lives in separate realities. And see, I tend to think of curiosity as a personal, inward-looking thing. You guys are more outward-looking, so I think that's a good blend there. So that's cool. We cannot end an episode without Doug's quote.
Yeah, be curious. Ask yourself, are you being kind to yourself? And, be kind to yourself.
And be curious about being kind. Well said. And remember, everybody, self-improvement is possible. And our ending quote is more appropriate for this session than probably any of us or any of the previous sessions. Be curious, not judgmental. Have a great week, folks, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.